Hello and welcome to Seattle City Makers. I'm your host, John Scholes. Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the third season of Seattle City Makers. We're glad to have you. And if this is your first episode, well, a special welcome to you. We've had just a ton of fun over these last 2 years bringing this podcast to all of you and conversations with some of Seattle's dynamic and interesting and talented and gutsy leaders across a variety of sectors. We've talked to folks in food and beverage and arts and culture and development and real estate and different business sectors, folks in the nonprofit sector, a couple of elected officials, and folks in civic life. All people that are making headlines, shaping how we experience our city today and in the future. And we've had just a blast getting to know them better and better understanding how they're making the decisions they're making and better understanding the impact they're having on our great city. So if this is your first episode, we welcome you and encourage you to check out some of the other conversations that we've been fortunate to have over these last 2 years. And to kick off our third season of Seattle City Makers, real pleased to be able to sit down with Anthony Paul Diaz, better known as AP Diaz, our superintendent of Seattle Parks. AP was appointed to that role by Mayor Harrell in September of 2022. And prior to coming up to Seattle, he held a similar executive position with the LA Parks Department and was the general counsel to the Parks Department as well down there in Los Angeles. And in his capacity here in Seattle as our parks superintendent, he oversees 500 parks, extensive natural areas, 120 miles of trails, 25 community centers, 2 small craft centers, 8 indoor pools, and much more. And I discussed with AP what drew him to Seattle, some of the lessons he takes from his time in LA, get his take on downtown's soon-to-open Waterfront Park. We discuss his favorite Seattle parks, his first job, and his perfect Saturday in Seattle. And no surprise, it includes a visit to a park. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with AP Diaz, the superintendent of Seattle's Parks Department. Well, thank you for making time for this.
Thank you. I'm excited. I was honored to be called up.
Yeah, we've been trying to get this set for a while. So, and you're our 50th. Is this right, James? 50th guest, our 50th episode.
Hey, I love that.
Yeah,
5-0.
We're now in our third season. Yeah, third season of Seattle City Makers. Wow. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Did you guys have good holidays? Were you around?
I did. Parks? It was my first holidays in Seattle, and was here and enjoyed the beauty of the city and seeing some of it activated and come alive. So it was fun.
Yeah. And how have you? So you're a year and a half now in thereabouts to your role.
Yeah.
How have you adjusted to our winter weather? Holidays in Seattle are different than holidays in LA.
Yeah, for sure. Although, the love of the magic of the holidays is alive, and actually did a little day trip out to Leavenworth for the first time to see Bavaria in the Evergreen State. And that was
wonderful
fun.
Northwest holiday tradition.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and really have been enjoying the city. It's actually nice to have a little bit of a colder winter than I'm used to. Didn't get the snow this year on Christmas. I was promised it would snow lightly on Christmas, and
you missed it last year. Last year was we got a good dump, I think, right?
Yeah.
So what drew you here? Did you find Seattle, or did Seattle find you?
In this wonderful journey that I've been on, Seattle found me, which was great. I had only been to the Pacific Northwest once before on a tour of Seattle, a parks tour in 2017, and never imagined that I would come back to be helping to run this portfolio and actually work in the city, be part of the city. I've been involved in public service this is my 25th year in public service, and I love engaging with cities. I love the work that I did in LA to be part of that fabric of the development of the city in the past 2 decades, and realizing that Seattle continues to be on the verge of growing into a larger city, or as I frame it, a small big city, and with the new leadership in the mayor's office and some of the new visioning and work he was advocating for, it was just really appealing and attractive to come up to Seattle.
So that seed was planted on your tour in 2017 when you were when you were up this way?
A little bit. Not
Mhm.
necessarily did I think it would grow into something that it has now, but that was my sort of first impression of just the natural beauty of the space. And so when the call came to consider the portfolio of parks, eh, for someone in my space, in my world, it's a
Mhm.
fantastic opportunity because this is just one large, big park, in my opinion. I've told the story before to people that, when I flew up from California, for the first time. You sort of leave the sort of arid desert areas of California. You start going up the middle of the coast. Central California gets very brown, and then you start getting a little bit more green as you get into NorCal. And you come over Oregon, and the majesty of all of the trees start to form. And right around that border area with Washington, the mountains just
Mhm.
pop out, and the volcanoes and the beautiful snow-peaked areas. And I'm looking down over Seattle every time I fly into it, and I realize the state's just one big park,
Yeah.
and all these little villages, all these neighborhoods are just villages in the
Yeah.
park. So that's how I think about it. And the Evergreen State, the Evergreen City, or Emerald City in the Evergreen State.
Mhm. And we've got another an LA colleague of yours that's lending his talents to the city, Greg Spots, who's also been a guest on our podcast here, leading the transportation department. Did you talk him into coming up, or did he talk you into coming up? Wasn't there one of you or
Actually, he came first.
he came first?
Yeah, he came
Okay.
first,
Yeah.
and we actually didn't talk about it
You didn't?
before.
Okay.
No, it was
I
just
had that
interesting coincidence that we both worked in LA and ended up both getting jobs up here.
Yeah.
So, but a nice LA story.
Yeah. What's been the most rewarding aspect of your first year and a half? What's been maybe most challenging or surprising?
I think in very positive ways, the interaction with the various communities in Seattle. There's so many factions and groups and organizations and partners around
Mhm.
the entire city. And again, coming from Los Angeles, the city seems smaller to me. Obviously, it is smaller and more easy to navigate in terms of our topography and getting around. However, although we're small here in Seattle, or smaller, the communities are big and broad and diverse. And so it's really taken me a good year to get to know my way around the city, get to know the different communities and the
Mhm.
interests. And that has been really exciting to me, just to see how much people are really involved and want to participate in Seattle government, in their park system, in their community development, in the fabric of the city. So it's a blessing, I think, that people are actively involved in this journey. And I've met some really great people.
Have you felt it the city that's easy to get to know because of the scale relative to LA and other
I
bigger
do.
cities?
I do, absolutely. I always joke, with some of my colleagues or friends they'll be in West Seattle and they'll say, oh gosh, I have to drive to Ballard. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to go. It's
What a
just too
trek.
far. Let's forget going to dinner there in Ballard or
They
something.
know there's a tunnel now, right?
Yeah,
Zips
exactly.
you right up there.
And I'm like, it's really not that far to get anywhere in the city. In LA, everything is a minimum of 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But in Seattle, I do think it's easier to get around and to see the city. And I like that. I love this idea of what I call a big small city.
Mhm.
So we're big in terms of our stature and our influence in the state and in the nation, in the world. We have world-class facilities, sports teams, symphonies, ballets, high education institutions,
Mhm.
world-renowned. We've got business and philanthropy and all of the things that make a city great, art and parks. But I love the fact that it is somewhat small, and you can know people on the street as well. That's something that I'm learning too. That's new and kind of fun. You may cross people's paths from time to time in this town.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have the best of all worlds here. It's why I think so many people are drawn to or stay in Seattle, is you've got all those great urban attributes, but
Right.
you can also navigate this place pretty easily, and then you can get out of it to the national parks and state parks without spending 4 hours stuck in traffic, right? You can
Yeah. The first time I went to Snoqualmie Falls,
Yeah.
was gearing up for this really long journey
right.
and realized like in a little bit over an hour or under an hour and a half for sure, I was in this amazing, beautiful part of our state,
Yeah.
underneath this amazing, incredible waterfall. So the abundance of nature all around is really fantastic, and to get out and to explore.
So what's been maybe more surprising or unexpected or a challenge in your first year and a half or so on the job?
I think really sort of figuring out how we can best maximize and operate our department. We're a large department. We have a lot of employees and we do a lot of work. In fact, I was just doing some visioning practices with our staff this morning for 2024 and, excuse me, reminding our staff um, that we're probably the largest community facing organization of any city department.
hmm
The amount of people that we interact with on a day to day basis, whether that's kids, adults, seniors, people in our natural and open spaces, hiking and running and using our park system. And I think we sometimes sell ourselves short because we do so much work and we do so much great work. And so I wanted to remind our staff that, the challenges will always come in public service, and that's what we sign up for. And those can be difficult and things that we need to navigate, with precision. However, on the positive note, there's so many great things that we can lay our head at night and be proud of, knowing that we helped someone, we made someone's day better, we
hmm
improved someone's health and wellness. I always tell our staff too, individuals trust us every single day with their most precious cargo, which is their children. They literally drop their children off at our community centers or at our daycare centers or at our schools, our programs, activities, summer camps all year round. That's a huge responsibility and a huge, a privilege to be part of the development of someone in their younger years, but also to keep mindful that we have a duty and an obligation also to sustain adults. We live very stressful lives in this world, and we need to have places where we can find respite and mental health and wellness, run, take walks, get into nature, and also to care for our aging population. Which there's an epidemic of loneliness going on throughout the nation and our city that exacerbated during the pandemic. And so I really want our parks to serve those three stakeholder groups intentionally and let individuals know that there's a place for everyone in the parks. Parks are for all, really.
And your relationship with parks and affinity for parks, you've written, talked about it, really came about. I think you talk about your time in law school, but also growing up in a pretty urban area, growing up in an apartment and not having your own sort of outdoor space
Yeah.
to connect with.
Yeah. When I grew up as a kid, I grew up in an area called Santa Monica, in an area that was a part of Santa Monica that was filled with just tons of apartment buildings from the 50s and 60s. And our play areas were our alleys. Me and my buddies, whether we were on bikes or running through apartment buildings and alleys and down through parking basements and just being kids and having fun and getting around the city. That was our place that we could play. And finding parks. There were parks around, but not necessarily in close walking distance. And so it's sort of as I got older and realized how valuable as an adult the parks meant to me. And then later in my work in Los Angeles, I practiced law for many years. I was a general counsel for the LA Parks Department and really then fell in love with the profession and saw the impact and the import of the work that parks can serve in society, and really became committed to the profession and started working there in management of the park system and trying to improve Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a huge city and didn't have the benefit of an Olmstead plan like Seattle does, which is significant and huge. And so as a result, you have a lot of parks, but they're not connected. They're
There was
hard to
no
navigate.
grand master plan.
No grand master
Yeah.
plan. And so those are some of the foundations of things. So when I came to Seattle, I really have wanted to lean into some best practices from Los Angeles and things that we were doing in California in terms of public-private partnerships and things that I would love to bring here to Seattle to just amplify our park system more and really lean into what our park system can be for our city.
What's your assessment of downtown's parks? What the opportunities you see, the challenges, and we'll talk about the Waterfront Park and maybe sort of everything but the Waterfront Park for now. As you
Yeah.
think of other spaces, Freeway Park and Westlake and Denny, how do you assess the opportunities, challenges there relative to LA, but also other cities with great urban public spaces?
For sure. I'm excited that we have these spaces in Seattle. One of the things that I noticed when I came up, first of all, was just there's a lot of art in our city. And I really love that. You can walk downtown and you see, whether it's a mural, you see an interesting sculpture, you see, public art, you see fountains, you see things that were designed with intentionality.
Mhm.
And we also have an abundant areas of public spaces, little plazas, little centers. And those things excite me because they are they are the parks in the downtown area. So might not be a neighborhood park in terms of acreage or
They
an
might not all be
abundance of
green,
trees.
right?
Right, may
Yeah.
not all be green,
Yeah.
and people forget those are indeed the park spaces. And using parks in a variety of ways. There's no one way to use a park. A park purpose can be a very broad definition of what recreation is. Recreation can be reading, in Pioneer Square. It can be listening to buskers
Mhm.
at Westlake. It can be coming together with fans for a sporting event or a local community event and getting together as community in one of our public spaces. So it's really important to realize that and to take care of those public spaces because they're few and far between, right? There's lots of buildings, there's lots of roadways, there's lots
Mhm.
of congestion. So we really have to be thankful that we had these dedicated park spaces carved out. The great thing about dedicated parkland is that it can never be used for other purposes. It can't be used for commercial purposes. It can't be used for things that go beyond a park purpose. Again, that's broad, but at the end of the day, the fee ownership of those lands belong to the city, the people, the parks department, and it's a big responsibility and
Mhm.
one I would love to continue to grow and develop.
Mhm. And we partnered with you on the report that Dan Biederman's firm out of New York City did with us last year to sort of assess all of downtown parks and makes or a good portion of them, not all of them, but a good number of them, and make some recommendations. What do you take from that work? What stood out for you on sort of the opportunities going forward to enhance what are carved out, dedicated in fee ownership public spaces, which we're certainly grateful to have in this downtown that has grown so rapidly, particularly over the last 20, 25 years. But what stood out for you, and what recommendations they brought forward?
Yeah. First, first of all thank you and DSA, the Downtown Seattle Association, for being equal partners and stewards for our public spaces, particularly in downtown, and things that stretch a variety of purposes, but also a love and passion for these open park spaces. I think the thing that I learned from that report is how vital they are to the economic recovery and the vitality of a city. Again, what makes Seattle unique is our beautiful outdoor spaces and environment. And I really believe that the report and the work that we're doing is that we have to continue to invest in these public spaces and also activate them and make sure that they come alive and they're just not stagnant places. So, unlike an alleyway, whose purpose is to get, maybe transportation or goods or deliveries in the
Mhm.
back end of an alley. A public space, a public plaza, a park, an open space downtown, it's meant to come alive, but it's our job to make it come alive and to make it active. And I believe that the more that we think about, I think that what the report sort of honed in for me, and I think the work we're doing together is that we have to transition away from thinking of downtown as just a core or a business hub. That traditional model, sort of invites people in for the day and then asks them to leave at night and then hopes they'll come back on the weekend. But I think when we start to look at downtown as a neighborhood, and I advocate for this all the time with my team, with people that I work with in the mayor's office. Downtown is a neighborhood, and it's where we want people to live. It's where we want people to work. It's where we want people to recreate and to shop and to eat and to do all the things that we do in our great Seattle neighborhoods. But I think the more that we begin to think of downtown as a neighborhood, the more that creative we can become, and to make this area thrive to its maximum potential. It has the foundation. It has everything ready and set in place to just go to the next level.
Yeah, appreciate you reinforcing that frame. Completely agree. And we often sort of talk about the neighborhoods in Seattle and then downtown, right? And we forget that downtown's really a collection of neighborhoods. And people live here and use this place like others do their neighborhoods in other parts of the city. Now turning our attention to the Waterfront Park, which will be complete largely in the middle portion of 2025, so not too far away, really. And then some additional improvements that will come north of Pier 62 through Myrtle Edwards and Centennial up to the Expedia campus. That'll be complete, we hope, in June of 2026, pre-World Cup in Seattle. What do you make of this public space and what is to come? How do you compare it to other great urban waterfront parks in North America? I mean, I have my perspective, but yours is, I think, much more informed. I mean, I've suggested that I think this is going to be the premier public space on any waterfront in North America. But how do you see it? And you've got a bigger park encyclopedia than I do.
Well, I totally agree with you. I'm so excited. I think it's
You don't think that's an overstatement?
Oh, not at all. I think people have not even fully realized the potential that this park is going to unleash for our city and for economic development in the city of Seattle. I mean, Seattle is a beautiful city when you look to the left, to the right, to the south, to the north. And the visionaries before saw that there was, a lack of access to the waterfront, and namely because of the freeway. And I remember seeing that project in 2017. I was in a little office, then was the, emerging of Friends of the Waterfront or the Association of the Waterfront Park. And there were all these Post-its on the wall in this little office building off of Western or First. And people were beginning to envision this project. And I remember them taking us to where the freeway was still going on. And I'm looking at this, huge, massive iron, 1950s, 40, project. And I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to get rid of this. There's no way they're going to bury this. There's no way this is going to happen. This just seems too big. And here I come back to take on this job. And one of the first things was to learn about the Waterfront Project and to go out for the first time. I remember standing in the exact same place going, where is it? It's gone. And then being able to see the majesty of the Olympics and Puget Sound, the Salish Sea, and beginning to realize and look at the plans of what is really coming here. And I think, some of the greatest cities in America and the world are surrounded by water. And that's a blessing. And I think it's just so much of our identity of who we are is about the water. It ties us back to the indigenous roots of those who were here initially on the shores and who were the original stewards and caretakers of the land. And it also sort of harkens us into the future of everything that lays out what can't be seen, but what we know is there. And so this park coming, opening up that space, bringing more greenery, bringing more connection, the ability for people to actually ride their bike from Alki all the way now up to Myrtle Edwards and Centennial and beyond. That's game changing. And it's amazing. And again, it's an extension in a way of that Olmsted visioning and plan.
Which in some ways kind of left downtown out of the mix, or maybe they had some plans, but not all fully developed for the downtown. I mean, kind of this donut hole in the city when it
Exactly.
comes to the Olmsted's plan that got all the boulevards and great parks
Yeah, and things
on the
along the lake.
edges, yeah, complete, but we sort of
Yeah.
miss the downtown.
Yeah. And the downtowns that have those areas, you think about, for those of us who have, traveled to Europe. I was just in Europe not too long ago, and what you do is you are invariably in some downtown space that is the identity and fabric of that city, which is often a park or a plaza or an open space. Those things we love about New York. We love Millennium Park in Chicago. But those have all been transformative projects.
Mhm.
Certainly, Central Park has grown many, many years, but the projects that they're doing with their parks on piers, along their waterfront, Chicago developing Millennial Park, and now us having our own truly big signature park system, which is going to invite so much just activation and beauty, economic development, tourism. It truly is going to be our signature park in the city of Seattle. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm even beyond the moon about the gift that has come in to extend that project. I remember the first time that I learned about the project, and I'm, looking at this amazing transformation that's going to come that really starts even down towards, Soto, down where our
Mhm.
stadiums are, and even the artistic development they've done with some of the transit areas that light up, and then we'll start connecting to the entire park system. I had wondered, why does it just stop
Yeah.
here? And was told that there was budget issues, there was jurisdictional boundaries, and it was just the project just wasn't complete. And obviously, other people had seen that and thought about that, and it had bothered them. And what an amazing coming together of individuals who love Seattle, who love parks and open
Mhm.
spaces, and wanted to come together in unified force to say, we need to make this wrong right. And to me, that's the true value of public private partnership. And for a city to be open to that is really important. I think sometimes in Seattle in the past, our natural inclination has been to be insular
Mhm.
about opening up to public private partnership, maybe out of fear, maybe out of a lack of control, or just fear of the unknown. However, the most successful public-private partnerships flourish and thrive when you are open, and you can set parameters and goals and mutual outcomes. But at the end of the day, and I always say this in the park system too, a lot of times in government we do a lot of finger pointing. We say that's not my responsibility. Oh, you need to call that department. Oh no, we don't do that. That's the county, and the county says, oh well, that's the city, and the city says that's the state, and it just drives,
Mhm.
community members mad. I mean, it just at the end of the day, nobody cares if it's the county, the state, or the city. They just want these things done. We're both community members. I'm a community member. I want my streets fixed. I
Yeah,
want my
it's only
life
one group of
fixed.
taxpayers, right?
Exactly. And so at the end of the day, the community, we take so much pride in our press conferences and taking credit for things, which we should, and there's value in that. But at the end of the day, the community is just going to remember that this is an amazing park. And they're going to be able to ride their bikes and walk and run all the way through and connect up to, by the way, and no one's been to Myrtle Edwards Park, or hasn't been there in a while. That area is beautiful. I love that. It's one of my favorite parks. So one of the first places that I found in Seattle, these sort of hidden gem just north of, the waterfront, and the bays that are carved out and the beautiful pathways. And of course it abuts Olympic Sculpture
Yeah.
Park. So all of it is going to be just, I think, amazing.
Yeah, to be able to sit on a log and look at a skyline in one direction, and as Dan Biederman from New York reminded us, I think when he was on the podcast last year, to then be able to look across the water at a national park.
Yeah.
And the other, that's a pretty unique experience to have that big nature and big urban
Yeah.
that converge.
And then what's great about that, using your analogy there and thinking about that, I can see myself sitting at that park, and you're sitting on one of those logs and you're looking out at the Salish Sea and you're looking out at the Olympic Mountains, and the ships coming up and down, which signify a lot of things. It signifies trade. It signifies our import as a gateway city. It signifies tourism with the cruise ships going to Canada, the orcas and whales
Yeah.
that come by. That signifies our natural, habitat and our beauty and our ecosystem. But then what's really great about that, in my opinion, is the ability to then turn around and see the entire skyline of
Hmm.
Seattle and reminds ourselves that we have this amazing city on the hill right next to the sea. And to me, that's just, I love cities and I love the ability to have everything connected is really important.
Yeah, you know where you are in that setting. There's nothing generic about it, right?
Right. And it'll be unique for us here in the city.
Speaking of public-private partnerships, I agree with you on your sort of assessment of Seattle's sometimes reluctance around really leaning in major ways in those areas. Although you look at some of the great things that are still great today that have existed for many years, whether it's Seattle Center, which really is an uber public-private partnership, right, and came about um, because of the World's Fair, which had a lot of private investment and energy around it, and is still today this patchwork of public ownership and private ownership and operation and all kinds of agreements. And the public doesn't know the difference necessarily. They just
Right.
enjoy it as Seattle's great living room. So there are lots of great examples, but we sometimes whiplash, it seems, from really embracing those opportunities to being suspect of them. What, from your experience in LA, are there some great examples, great lessons from your time there of how that city, particularly around its development, management of parks and urban public spaces, where they've
Yeah.
embraced those and leveraging public-private partnerships?
I think the best way that we leverage that in a city like Seattle is understanding, what it is that we want to be, what it is that we're lacking, where is it that we can improve, and where can we invite natural partners around us. So sometimes I think, particularly in government or departments, and I remind my staff of this all the time, is we have to know our strengths and our weaknesses. Let's lead out on the things that we're good at, but let's also not be afraid to admit that we don't have the resources to, take care of something perhaps at its maximum benefit. We don't have the resources to develop something at its maximum benefit. But there are so many people around us that do. And what an amazing city that we live in. I mean, we are blessed to be surrounded by, world-class medical institutions, educational facilities, artistic facilities. Some of the best artists in the world come from Seattle, musicians, some of the best food in Seattle, sports, amazing sporting teams. We're just lacking one. And I think that's coming soon. So I'm excited for that. But all of those partners, all of our fellow community members in the private sector, they're also community members. They also want to see a thriving downtown. They also want to see their city operating at its maximum, and they also want to be good corporate citizens. And they want to invest in things. Some of our sports teams do amazing work with the legacy projects that are floating around town. I love that. Again, that is a recognition that we have a partner that can do something, that wants to do something, an admission on our part that we don't have the ability to do all of the projects that we want to do in the world of sports or recreation or development. So let's work together. Seattle Public Parks is the largest owner of land in the city of Seattle. And with our other city partners, we have spaces where artists can come and should have a residence. We have places to invite some of our aspiring cooks and urban farmists and food, cultivators of products to come in and try things. And so I want to use our park spaces for good in that way, to be incubators. There's many things that we can be doing along the ocean and the sea with our university to study. We have properties that could be used. We have areas that can be transformed. So I think the possibilities are endless, and I think there's a good balance, and you have to be sure to maintain the public spaces. You certainly don't ever want to give away land or sell out, but when you have the ability to shape the narrative and the vision and invite partners to come in, we have to be open to that, and we can learn a lot. And I think that's where we truly will maximize on all our pistons when we're working together.
Yeah, well, I very much appreciate your perspective on that, and think you're right that we're lucky that a couple of philanthropists and Mackenzie Scott and Linda French Gates and Barry Diller have come forward to extend that Waterfront Park beyond Pier 62, because you really got to that point, you're sort of like left hanging of like, it really ends here, and
Right.
but to complete that connection up to Myrtle Edwards and
Yeah.
Centennial and Smith Cove is going to be phenomenal, and you all have been great in moving quickly as the landowner there to work with groups and those donors to try to make this happen by World Cup 26.
Yeah. Another exciting thing, right?
Yeah,
It's
that'll be
coming.
great, and I'm sure utilizing lots of park spaces in the Waterfront Park for Fan Fest and other activities. Have you developed in your time here a favorite park in Seattle that you go to for your own sort of personal recreation or respite?
Yeah, I have sort of a evolving list, and I have a goal one day to reach all our parks. It's going to take a while. We have nearly 500 parks in the city of Seattle. And sometimes, which is great, we have, we affectionately call our rainbow signs, which are our
Mhm.
park signs. And sometimes I'll be driving in an area, going to a meeting, not going to one park, and catch out of my eye one of our rainbow signs. It could be a small pocket park or a park that I haven't seen yet. And so I love to sort of check those off. But my sort of list of favorite parks constantly evolves. There's a couple that always stay to the top, and then a couple that add on as I go. As I mentioned, I love Myrtle Edwards Park. I think it's a beautiful space. I also am just enamored with the beauty at Lincoln Park in West Seattle. Just the magnificent grove of trees, again, being right on the water, the ability to walk or jog or bike or roll along the beautiful coast there, which looks out towards Vashon and Bainbridge and the sea. It's just so idyllic. We have the only municipal saltwater pool
Hmm.
at Lincoln Park, which is Coleman, where you almost like an infinity pool, where you can see through the glass
Mhm.
and you can see the ocean and swim. It's a beautiful place. We have art there. We have a temporary art sculpture from the Danish artist Thomas Dambo that is there, and a lot going on. So I love that park. I also love Carkeek Park. Again, really close to the water, and the ability to see the trains coming by and to see kids run up on the bridge and watch the trains go by. It's so exciting for a kid to just see a train that's going by,
Mhm.
and to be able to see sunsets. And to then walk into the forest area and hike. Seward Park is absolutely idyllic as well. So there's a lot of beautiful parks in Seattle, some big and some small. And that's always a question that I ask people when that's my new sort of cocktail question or happy hour question is, what's your favorite park? Can I ask you, what's your favorite Seattle park?
I like Myrtle Edwards as well. Just a
Yeah.
lot of great memories running the jogging stroller with my kids through there and stopping at Uptown Espresso and getting banana bread so they wouldn't scream and hit each other in the double bob running stroller as I tried to make my way through there, and then coming back up through the market back
Yeah.
home when they were younger. There's just a
Yeah.
lot, and now I walk it with the dog, and she doesn't need banana bread from Uptown. She's fine, doesn't fight with anybody, but yeah, and I love just turning around, and then you come back and you got the skyline in front of you and
Yeah.
the Olympics to the right. It's just, yeah, it's a nice way to spend a Saturday or Sunday morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing is that I'd love to tell a story too about Seattle is, I first came, was in the summer, and it's idyllic, right? It's usually mid 70s, stays light out late. It's a perfect time. The city is alive. People are out. The weather is absolutely perfect. And so I would joke with my friends and colleagues, my neighbors. I'd say it's always like this, right? It's going to be like this all year, and they would say, "Oh yeah, yeah, of course," But without fail, I had a full expectation that once sort of like, we would have days of, stronger rain or more gray or a little bit colder that, people would sort of just stop, from going outside or doing things. And I remember having a couple of meetings outdoors, and asking my staff earlier on, it was a particular day where it's like raining in the morning. It was really cloudy. It looked cold out. And said, "Do you think this meeting's going to go on today at 4?" And they said, "Well, yeah, it's on calendar." And I said, "Are they going to cancel it? Why would they cancel it?" I said, "Well, it's kind of raining and it looks a little cold out." They said, "If we did that, we'd never have meetings." So, and sure enough, I still chuckle today. I'm a runner and I love to run, and ran a lot outdoor all year round in Los Angeles because the weather is so warm. Getting myself acclimated to doing, colder runs now. My colleagues keep telling me, "Have you done a rain run yet?" I haven't, so I have to really prove myself. But sure enough, without fail, days that it's raining and I'm driving around, at a minimum, I'll count anywhere I am, somewhere in the city, at least 10 people that I see running. Doesn't stop them because they're using our parks to run. They're using our outdoor streets. Seattle is active and
Yeah.
out and about.
And hardy.
And hardy. And
We'll ski in the rain. We've got outdoor preschools, right?
Yeah, outdoor preschools.
You'll find somebody that will be kayaking when it's snowing out, when the few days it does snow here, somebody will be on the water.
Yeah. I guess everyone says there's no bad weather, there's just bad clothing.
Yeah.
Right?
And bad attitudes.
And bad attitudes,
Yeah.
right?
Pickleball.
Yeah. Are you a fan? Do you play?
I've just played a little bit, but it seems like people are like fanatics about it.
Mm.
And I'm sure pressuring you in the department of like, we need more pickleball courts. And then you've got the neighbors of pickleball courts in certain areas that have said pickleball is too loud. How are you navigating the politics of pickleball?
Yeah. I never knew it would be such a contentious issue. However, I've learned that, pickleball was invented right here on Bainbridge Island in the 70s. And so, there's some hometown pride in the sport. I will tell you that it's something that is affecting park agencies throughout the entire nation. And it really is a sport that has taken off and is growing quickly. And the demand for it is quite high. The one thing I'm trying to remind people is that, we want to be in the Parks Department. We're always, trying to best serve the public. And whether that's through new sports or new activities or new ideas that might come up, we need to lean into that because people need to be able to use the park spaces the way they need them to be. And that's going to evolve over time. But we also have limited, park space, and we have lots of needs to balance. We also have, a thriving tennis community in Seattle, which needs to feel supported and not being pushed out and feel that there's a place for all. So I kind of believe that in pickleball, we definitely need to work on strategies to provide more spaces. And we're learning about that. And also the development of pickleball courts can be developed differently than tennis courts. Tennis courts require, huge fencing, certain amount of distance, a certain amount of width. And so it's more costly of a project. Pickleball can be built really, we just built pickleball downtown.
Yeah, Fifth Avenue, right?
Yeah, Fifth Avenue, right in downtown Seattle.
Yep.
So you can build pickleball in a variety of spaces that don't necessarily always need to impede on an existing tennis court.
And that was a street right away.
So I want to see more dedicated sites for tennis and for pickleball so that both communities feel supported. You're right, though. There are issues with noise. It can be loud, and a lot of community people don't want it close to their homes, their residences, their businesses. I've been doing a lot of study about this, and thankfully, I've kept wondering, when is the industry going to respond and come out with, quieter equipment? And it seems like since in the last 3 months, there's been a plethora of articles about newer equipment that reduces the noise reduction for paddles, for the types of balls. And I'm looking forward to that because I think hopefully that will ease some neighbor concerns. But we have to be creative in our solution. However, I will say that the provision of pickleball in the city of Seattle doesn't need to fall and can't fall solely on the Parks Department. We need more private pickleball facilities to meet the demand.
Well, and your colleague Greg has come through a street right of way, right? Over there at Fifth Ave downtown.
Exactly.
Yeah, you didn't have to give up park space.
We didn't have to give up park space. We used downtown space. But again, that's another city agency. I want to see them, people coming in, and some of our great tennis facilities are on parkland. They're operated by
privately operated.
Again, we have the space, so we'd love for people to come forward and propose an idea and develop a center or two. We can also use creative spaces. By the way, I've talked about this with my colleagues. We can do pickleball on inside downtown buildings, on rooftops,
on top of them.
Top of them, exactly.
Yeah, my executive coach who lives in Austin, who's a pickleball fanatic, plays every day with her husband. Just sent me a photo yesterday of someplace in downtown Austin with I think they've got 6 or 7 on a rooftop in one of their downtown buildings, 6 or 7 lit pickleball courts.
Yeah. So again, and imagine during the summer when it stays light until 9 o'clock. They look terrific. So downtown would be great. I think we need more pickleball downtown. It's also something people can do after work or before work and really become social. But it is a great sport because it invites and encourages people of all ages to participate. And when pickleball is being done properly, they also have this sort of come as you are. You can come up to a pickleball court. You don't need to know people.
Yeah.
Lay your paddle down and find somebody that's at your skill level and be invited in. And so it's a lot of fun that way. So I'm a big proponent of it. I love all racket sports, though. I love sports in general. So I'm trying to try all of our sports in Seattle too, so that I can be a good steward of our sports system.
Has the political potency of the pickleball constituency reached the level of off-leash dog owner constituency? You don't have to answer that if you get yourself in trouble.
They're both very passionate and spirited issues in Seattle.
For their paddles and their poodles and other canines. Yeah. We have a couple of standard questions on the podcast, AP. The first is, what was your first job that you took a paycheck for?
Oh, I love that question. I didn't know that was coming. My first job was scooping ice cream. I had 2 ice cream jobs in my early years. One was just that I actually talked the owner into giving me a job. Literally on the corner of the street that I grew up on, there was this great, wonderful Persian man who opened he had lived in the Netherlands, had fled there after the revolution, and then opened the Natural Dutch ice cream shop in Santa Monica. And but he didn't speak any English, and he was a great guy, and he had a big smile, and he would give us ice cream all after school. And he was so busy, and he was running around. It was literally walking distance from my house, and so I asked him if I could have a job. And my job was to also taste the ice creams when they would come in, because he didn't know how to write the flavors in English. And so I would taste them and say, "Oh, well, that's that's vanilla. That's Rocky Road. That's pistachio." And we would write out the names. And so that was my first job. Scooping ice cream.
Are you an ice cream lover still to this day?
I must confess I am. Kind of risen to the gelato level, I guess. Become a little bit more ice cream sophisticated, but will still love. I don't know if they had it in Seattle. It was the form of Thrifty's ice cream, which was basically a drugstore. But back then you would pay like $0.25 for ice cream, and you get this like metal scoop thing on a cone. But I love ice cream.
You must have a very refined and sophisticated ice cream palate from all the tasting of all the different flavors.
Exactly. I could probably do some blind
tasting notes you could write for
tasting notes for ice cream. Exactly. Yeah. I hope some ice cream purveyor out there in Seattle listening is going to invite me now.
Well, we had Molly Moon on a couple episodes ago, so maybe she will catch this podcast and
Molly, I'm ready.
Offer you a consulting gig of some sort. And our final question, our second and final, or standard question and final question is, what's your perfect Saturday in Seattle now that you've had 18 or so months in the city? If you can design an itinerary from morning till evening, what are you doing?
I like that. Well, it's going to start in the morning. Hopefully, my ideal Saturday, if I don't have anything planned, I always say I'm going to sleep late. But at this point in my life, late is like 7:30, 8. I still wake up early. So it's going to start with some coffee for sure. A catch up on local and international news. And then, figuring out during the day how I'm going to get outside at some point. And usually there will be a run involved. If it's a Saturday or a Sunday, I've kind of perfected my sort of what I call my long run day, but sort of just a good 5-mile run. Mm-hmm. And I now have a route. Finally took me a while. That was my biggest anxiety when I moved to Los Angeles. I gave up my perfect running route
down there
from my neighborhood
Yeah,
down there.
yeah.
It's perfect and I love it. And I was for a long time just perplexed and I wasn't finding the right running route and getting caught on
And you're out
hills.
in West Seattle?
No, I'm up a little bit in Northwest Seattle.
Okay.
But I've now found an idyllic route and I
Yeah.
love it. So that's generally on a Saturday or a Sunday. So yeah. And then maybe exploring, again, doing a lot of day trips now on the weekends to explore places that I haven't been. A lot of my first time was just spent in the sort of metro Seattle area. But this is a big state. It's a beautiful state. And so getting out to, Bainbridge, I just got out to Leavenworth, to Snoqualmie Falls, still want to visit our islands and get up to Canada and get up to, more into our nature and national parks. So it'll definitely involve, coffee, catch up on the news, a run, and some sort of outdoor learning exploration of the city.
You sound like a legit Seattleite, like you grew up here. That's a great Seattle day.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, AP, for making time
Yeah.
to come on the podcast and for the great energy, perspective, and leadership and vision you're bringing to our city. And we should mention you're hosting Greater Greener
Yes.
conference in June. A bunch of your park colleagues from around the country. What will happen? What will happen there? What do you hope to happen and sort of show off and learn and discuss?
Well, I'm excited. It'll be one of the largest concentration of park professionals in the country, as well as some international partners. A lot of urban planners and architects, landscape architects, designers, city planners. So we're excited to be the host of the Greater and Greener Conference, which is in June. And we're also excited to showcase some of the exciting projects that we're working on in Seattle, some of the ones that we talked about today, and really sort of also some of the things that we're doing for the environment and climate action and climate mitigation strategies. Really exciting. And I think the city as a whole, the Parks Department, our OSC office, the mayor's office, we've got some really great big, bold initiatives that we're going to be leading out on. So I'm excited to share those, but also to learn, sort of the best practices from our other partners that are coming into town. And then I always encourage and inspire our staff, or when I go to a conference, I don't want to just learn the best practices, but I want to find out what are the next practices and keep an eye on that so that we're ahead of the curve. And we're planning for, vibrancy and sustainability in our city. So excited for that. Yeah, that's going to be really an exciting time. Another thing to add to our list of things in Seattle that we're doing on the sort of national and world stage of conferences and sporting events and, art festivals and political events. So it's exciting.
Yeah, great to have that activity downtown. And thanks for bringing your industry association, or at least one of them, to our downtown. We're doing the same with the International Downtown Association not too long after in September, who's coming here after 30 years of not being here. And I keep telling people, just bring your professional trade association to have a meeting or conference in downtown. It's a great sort of revitalization strategy. We can all kind of do our part to, drive more business to our city. So look forward to meeting some of those folks and seeing what they have to learn and teach us when they're here in June.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, John, for inviting me. I always really enjoy working with your colleagues, my colleagues. I call them our colleagues. I was joking with your staff earlier here at DSA that we're all sort of just doing the same work. We both love the city of Seattle. We both love downtown. We love people. We love community. And we've got a great city. I mean, an amazing city, an amazing state, and the ability to do more and to amplify our park system, our downtown areas, our business development. It's exciting, and I'm excited for the future, and I believe really the next and best chapters are ahead. So always excited to be in partnership with you and your team, and to finally be here, the 50th episode. I love it. Thank you.
Amen to all of that. Thanks, AP. Well, hope you enjoyed my conversation with AP Diaz, a terrific guy, and it's great to have somebody with his experience and perspective leading Seattle's gem of a park system. We're grateful that he's made his way north and lending his talents to our great city and shaping how we experience the outdoors in Seattle. So thanks, AP. I want to close out with a recommendation of something you got to check out in downtown Seattle. This is sort of our standard way of closing out the podcast. Could be something that just opened, something to come, maybe something that's reopened. In this case, I want to highlight the 3 businesses on Pine Street in the ground floor of the beautiful new Summit Building Convention Center that are all now open. Monorail Espresso, Pike Brewing, and Proshki all have new locations on Pine Street between Capitol Hill and downtown as you make your way down Pine Street on the north side there in the beautiful new Convention Center building. They've got these great new locations with walk-up windows and outdoor seating and heaters covered. So it's a great spot, especially at this time of year, to grab a beer, a Proshki, a coffee on your way between downtown and Capitol Hill. So congratulations to all those great folks who've added to their offerings in downtown and opened a couple of great locations. So go support them and go check them out. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on this episode of Seattle City Makers, presented by the Downtown Seattle Association, with support from James Cito and production by Spark Creative.